A day of remembrance.
When he saw evil camped across the horizon, he called that evil by its name.
And bearing witness, the former adversary who would become a friend.
Together with the Soviet leadership, he was able to lay down the first building blocks in a new relationship between our two countries, in a relationship that ultimately resulted in the end of the Cold War.
And on a day of vivid images, some photographers remember the man whose image they captured.
They were all, as you see them here, watching the replay of the explosion for the first time.
Tonight,
he is home now. He is free.
Farewell to a president. The end of the long goodbye.
From ABC News. This is Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
In many respects, of course, President Reagan's family, staffers, admirers, and friends have had the better part of 10 years to work through the process of grieving. The president had hinted at that in the remarkable handwritten letter that he addressed to the nation when he learned that he had Alzheimer's. Nancy Reagan had used a phrase familiar to the loved ones of Alzheimer patients, the long goodbye, she and others have called it. It's a phrase that both hints at and masks a lot of pain. There came a point, someone told me a couple of years back, that the Secret Service covered all the mirrors in the Reagan home. The president had been repeatedly startled by the unrecognized stranger staring back at him from those mirrors. So what unfolded today here in Washington and then this evening behind the Reagan Library and Museum in the hills overlooking the Pacific Ocean was the end of that long goodbye. Indeed, it had some of the overtones of a celebration. This was less about the very old man being laid to rest and much more about the remarkable politician who, in his late 60s and well into his 70s, reshaped the way the U.S. government did business and helped bring about the demise of the Soviet Union. Inside the soaring space of the National Cathedral this morning, that battle against what Mr. Reagan described as the evil empire was raised again and again. A little later in this program, we'll bring you a conversation I had with Mikhail Gorbachev, who led the evil empire when President Reagan first used the term, but who was sitting in the National Cathedral this morning with other foreign dignitaries when the Reagan casket was carried into the church.
Ronald Reagan saw Soviet communism as a menace to be confronted, in the genuine belief that its squalid underpinnings would fall swiftly to the gathering winds of freedom.
He believed in America, so he made it his shining city on a hill. He believed in freedom, so he acted on behalf of its values and ideals. He believed in tomorrow, so the great communicator became the great liberator. He talked of winning one for the Gipper, and as president, through his relationship with Mikhail Gorbachev with us today, the Gipper, and yes, Mikhail Gorbachev, won one for peace around the world.
Ronald Reagan was such a cheerful and invigorating presence that it was easy to forget what daunting historic tasks he set himself. He sought to mend America's wounded spirit, to restore the strength of the free world, and to free the slaves of communism.
When he saw evil camped across the horizon, he called that evil by its name. And there were no doubters among those who swung hammers at the hated wall that the first and hardest blow had been struck by President Ronald Reagan.
When we come back, a man whom history will link forever with Ronald Reagan, his former adversary and then partner for peace, Mikhail Gorbachev.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by Lexus.
At Lexus, we realize that no car can control the elements. But that didn't stop our engineers from designing one that actually embraces them.
It's ant season. Terminix them with our exclusive problem-solved guarantee. 1-800-TERMINUS.
If you're one of the millions of Americans who's searching for a way to get back into the rhythm of life, maybe it's time you ask your doctor about Ambien, or call toll-free 1-877-9-AMBIEN.
Meanwhile, at dinner.
Our network's been down for 2 days.
Internet worm.
Whoa.
Our sales took a pounding. How did yours do?
It hit our suppliers.
You can never catch up.
Oh, the twin brothers doom and gloom.
Jeff, you're awfully quiet.
Our network didn't go down.
No.
No?
No.
And get the check.
Keeping business up and running. This is the power of the network. Now.
Sunday, Secretary of State Colin Powell and the new president of Iraq, Ghazi al-Yawer, sit down with George Stephanopoulos. The UN says Iraq should determine its own future, but can Iraq do it alone? Will the rest of the world leave Iraq alone? Find out on ABC's This Week, Sunday.
Yeah, I wonder why it took Sonic so long to add salad to the menu. Huh?
Last time I was here, I had salad.
What was it? What was...
It was like a beef base, and then lettuce and tomato with like a mustardy dressing. I guess it was a side order of bread.
You got a burger.
You call it what you want. I'm going to call it a beef salad with hot cheese and a side order of bun.
Fresh taste salads, new at Sonic. Try our grilled chicken, popcorn chicken, or Santa Fe grilled chicken salad, made fresh with Hidden Valley dressings. It's not just good, it's Sonic good.
What the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little love. What the world needs now is love, sweet love.
Eternity for men. Calvin Klein. For Father's Day, your free gift at the Calvin Klein men's fragrance counter at Dillard's.
Mikhail Gorbachev came to Washington to pay his respects to a friend who had once been a harsh adversary. And it was on that note that I began my conversation with the former Secretary General of the Soviet Communist Party. Go back for a moment to that day in Berlin.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
What did you think of him when you heard that the first time?
Вы знаете, вот вы удивитесь, но нас это не произвело
Well, you might be surprised, but we were not particularly impressed by that. The president who is doing a show, well, one begins to doubt how serious the person is, and I don't think that this was really serious. It was a kind of show. And as for shows, as for publicity stunts, no, I don't think that that is the real presidential style.
I was just trying to get a sense of how far you and President Reagan came together. Because I get the sense maybe then you didn't respect him as much as you came to respect him later on.
Well, the most difficult period was when I was just starting as the leader of the Soviet Union. At that time, for 6 years, the top leaders of the Soviet Union and of the United States had not met. There was no dialogue, no conversation between the leaders of our two countries. And everyone, just about everyone at that time, felt that the deadly train of the nuclear arms race cannot be stopped, that we were moving toward the abyss. Of course, in the beginning, he, talking to his people, called me a diehard communist, and I, talking to my people, called him a real dinosaur.
Was there a time back then, was there a moment you remember when you really thought, you know, nuclear war between our two countries could happen? The danger is real?
Между прочим, вторая моя внучка младшая.
Years ago, when I was working in one of the provinces of Russia, film shows were arranged for provincial party leaders, and one of the films that was shown to us was about nuclear weapons and the effects of nuclear weapons. And that film also contained advice on how to behave in case of a nuclear explosion. And a lot of that advice was, frankly, quite ridiculous and stupid. For example, they said, you should not turn in the direction of the explosion. You should not look at the explosion. How can that be? You know, a normal human reaction is that you turn in the direction of that bang. So there was a lot of advice of that kind, and I said, my conclusion is that we must do all we can in order to prevent nuclear war, in order for nuclear war never to happen.
Maybe enough time has passed that you can share with me what your intelligence advisors were telling you the first time that you were going to sit down with Mr. Reagan. How had they briefed you about him?
Правый, человек правых убеждений.
A man who is a committed right-winger, a person who is at the extreme right of the Republican Party, and a real hawk. A person who is guided by the interests of the military-industrial complex, and a fierce anti-communist. Of course, we saw what he was politically, but at the same time we saw not just his political potential, but his potential as a human being. We saw that he was a man of vision, we saw that he was a man of intuition, and that he had instincts. And I believe that he was able to step over his ideological commitment and to engage in a rapprochement with us. So he accommodated change. And that's why I call him an extraordinary human being and a great president.
As one might expect from an old statesman and political pro, Mikhail Gorbachev also managed to work in a point of his own. Not about Ronald Reagan, but about the foreign policy of the current President of the United States.
У нее было больше пессимизма.
You have to bear in mind that there was a time when we wanted to make the world happy by imposing communism. We thought that communism was good for people, and in every possible way tried to force-feed communism. to various people. And now it seems that there are plans underway to make people happy by bringing democracy in tanks or in airplanes or in some other way, forgetting that people, nations have their own history and culture and traditions, and that no model, even a democratic model, can really be imposed. I think that it is extremely simplistic and it's a kind of primitive thinking to expect that this kind of bulldozing under whatever guise could actually make the world safer. It's similar to die-hard Bolshevism.
When we come back, the final ceremonies to lay a president to rest.
Where are you guys going?
To the airport. What about the rollout?
We're on it. You're on it?
On schedule?
On schedule. On budget? On budget.
Online?
Online. On target. On track.
And the prototype?
On a plane to Tokyo.
Carry on.
Carry on.
Carry on.
Carry on.
You carry on.
When you can respond to anything, you're on. On-demand business from IBM.
The thrill of white-knuckle driving obviously came from someone with white knuckles.
Great day, let's bring her in.
Formula One-inspired Michelin Pilot Series high-performance tires.
Or not.
Michelin, because so much performance is riding on your tires. Enter for a chance to win a trip to the island of Corsica for a World Rally Championship race and other prizes. Visit your Michelin dealer today.
Jimmy Kimmel Live.
Here's Cousin Sal accepting deliveries.
How are you?
Pizza? Sorry about that, sir. I lost my mind a little.
It's an all-new Jimmy Kimmel Live. ABC coming up.
Depend on Lisa Patton and News 2 Storm Tracker for early warning of severe weather.
We're able to tell them when and where that damage could occur.
Weather's at its worst. Turn to the best. Depend on Lisa Patton and News 2 Storm Tracker.
It's incredible. $99 a month gets you a new boat. And not just any boat, one of America's favorite boats. Get a Tahoe Q4, a Sun Tracker Party Barge 22, or America's best-selling Tracker Pro Team 175. Only $99 a month. Choose from dozens of models. Call the sales hotline now for details on how $99 a month gets you on the water today. Visit Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World to see what all the excitement's about.
Every night, play along with the Tennessee Lottery Cash 3 drawings, live on News 2. Will the balls fall your way? Watch the Cash 3 drawings live every night at 6:28, only on News 2.
The conclusion of the long goodbye came tonight on the hillside of the Reagan Library in Simi Valley, California, facing west toward the Pacific and the setting sun.
At the early onset of Alzheimer's disease, my father and I would tell each other we loved each other and we'd give each other a hug. As the years went by and he could no longer verbalize my name, he recognized me as the man who hugged him. And so when I would walk into the house, he would be there in his chair, opening up his arms for that hug, hello, and the hug goodbye.
Many years ago, my father decided to write down his reflections about death, specifically his own, and how he would want people to feel about it. He chose to write down the first verse of an Alfred Lord Tennyson poem, Crossing the Bar, and then he decided to add a couple of lines of his own. I don't think Tennyson will mind. In fact, they've probably already discussed it by now. Tennyson wrote, "Sunset and evening star, and one clear call for me. And may there be no moaning of the bar when I put out to sea." My father added, "We have God's promise that I have gone on to a better world where there is no pain or sorrow. Bring comfort to those who may mourn my going."
He never made the fatal mistake of so many politicians, wearing his faith on his sleeve to gain political advantage. True, after he was shot and nearly killed early in his presidency, he came to believe that God had spared him in order that he might do good. But he accepted that as a responsibility, not a mandate. And there is a profound difference.
When we come back, looking at President Reagan through a lens and capturing history.
At GMC, we know that payloads don't need to stretch their legs. Listen to XM satellite radio, enjoy dual climate control, or watch DVDs. But people do. Introducing the new GMC Sierra 1500 Crew Cab. Professional grade engineering. It's not more than you need, just more than you're used to.
Oh, Ben. Wow. Do you know that you went over your macaroni minutes this month? Yesterday alone, it took you 23 minutes to eat your macaroni, and those overage charges come to $49. How do you want to pay?
Introducing an entirely new way to buy wireless. The Sprint PCS Fair and Flexible plan adjusts every month so you don't waste a lot of money or minutes.
No guesswork, no overage penalties.
Good. Sprint PCS. Now that's better.
Lakers versus Pistons. Detroit is up 2-1 in the series after a crushing victory. Can LA find a way to even it up? The NBA Finals on ABC. Coverage begins Sunday night, 8:30 Eastern.
Try this on for size. Guns, hookers, crooks, and murder. Don't move. And that's all before breakfast. You think Sipowicz is tough?
You better know how to take a punch.
Wait till you meet the real NYPD.
You got the right to remain silent. I suggest you do so.
Take a wild ride with some real-life heroes.
I love the NYPD!
Buckle up for NYPD 24/7.
Good job, brother.
You won't believe what you're going to see. Even I did.
Coming June 22nd, the real NYPD. NYPD 24/7, Tuesdays at 10/9 Central.
Introducing the Nissan Quest, a revolutionary minivan featuring 5 Skyview windows, front and side impact 5-star safety rating, an innovative center console, automated side and rear lift doors, and fold-away second and third row seats. Moms have changed. Shouldn't the minivan?
Nature's Market. Eat healthy, be healthy.
Summertime means fun for kids, but don't let your kids' eating habits fall by the wayside. Eat healthy and be healthy by keeping your kitchen clear of sugary snacks and stocked full of whole foods like fruits and vegetables, whole grain bars, and cereals, while remembering to make it fun. And you're on your way to a healthier day.
Brought to you by Kashi and your Kroger Nature's Market.
Just a handful of photojournalists had a front row seat to the history that President Reagan made while he was in the White House. The images they captured became many of our memories.
I used to really enjoy covering President Reagan because it's fun to photograph people who are having a good time.
Probably the one thing, if you talk to any of his aides, that they'll tell you is that every meeting started with a story or a joke.
He carried himself sort of the same way, inside and outside. He treated people the same way, outside and inside. He was the same in public with Mrs. Reagan as he was with her on the inside.
President and Mrs. Reagan were standing outside on the Truman balcony, and it was a really wonderful opportunity to get a picture of this couple being how they are with each other. And the editors wouldn't run the picture because they said it was too schmaltzy. And I said, but they are schmaltzy. What's wrong with that? This is the way they are.
I think the summits with Gorbachev are, in my eyes, will be his biggest legacy.
This was in Geneva, and you could see and feel the anxiety. When he walked out that door to greet Gorbachev, he was on, the lights, camera action, unbelievable. I went back in after the meeting had broken up, and I took a photograph of Gorbachev looking at Reagan in this almost adoring fashion. I mean, it was the seduction of Mikhail Gorbachev by Ronald Reagan. The guy had this incredible persona, and he knew how to use it. I mean, one of the best examples of that was outside the Reykjavik summit.
He had this look on his face that I had never seen before. He was very grim. You could tell he was angry. You really felt that, wow, this is the Cold War.
When it did go well, it was equally obvious when they met for the first time in Washington at the White House. Gorbachev said something to Reagan, and Reagan was holding Gorbachev's hand, and he said something to Reagan that Reagan threw his head back and laughed at. So you knew that these people at least were communicating, and in this case, communicating well. My favorite picture of him, one day in a ceremony over in the executive office building with state troopers. They gave him this, wonderful big hat, and he took it, and he didn't just put it on his head. He knew what to do with the hat that was slightly like a cowboy hat. He put it on, cocked it slightly to the side, and he waves goodbye. And to me, that was Ronald Reagan.
January 20th, 1989 was the president's last day, and he kind of just took one last look around the office. The desk was cleared of all his mementos. He looked in the drawer of the desk to make sure the note that he had left for the incoming President Bush was still there. This picture was taken aboard the helicopter after President Bush 41 was sworn in, and pilots circled the Capitol twice. The helicopter then went up Pennsylvania Avenue and circled around the White House, and the President said to Mrs. Reagan, "Honey, there's our little bungalow down there." And then they were off to Andrews, where we caught the plane to go to his home in California.
And that's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
Remembering Ronald Reagan, his life and his legacy. To order this program on VHS or DVD, go to abcnews.com or call 1-800-505-6139.
You're watching ABC.